start this little workshop portion, then you can go, and we'll talk about why it's like,
Oh, missed that part, my bad.
So I just put this together before the scrim, or for this, so we're just going to go through this real quick and see how that goes. Alright, so I want to introduce you guys to the way I prefer that you guys do comms, right? And it's not what other people would advise, and it's not anything I've ever seen another coach do, but if I'm coaching, then we're doing it my way. Because you pay me to be here, to have my own input in the team, so this is my input, right? So radical comm structures, right? So like for a successful team fight to occur, and successful like verbal comms to occur, we would need everything in the giant box, right? Can everyone see? Anyone not able to see?
Yeah.
Right. So everything inside this box. Now, how much of it do you guys actually do?
I think
Was that like a rhetorical question?
Well, like
I think
realistically.
we get all tracking a little bit better recently, but the other stuff not so much.
So we get maybe half this box, maybe, right?
You fight planning, we just never follow it.
My feeling, and I could be wrong here, just because this is my point of view, but I feel like since we've swapped a few things and lost a player as well, one thing that's really fallen off is our target calling.
But could it be because like your team is
and
just so
following through on
overwhelmed,
fight
right?
plans.
Like you guys
Yeah.
are overwhelmed with the amount of information you need to process. So like I have a proposition for you guys essentially, right? So that little guy in the box, that's about where you guys are right now, right? And that's where the average plat team is too. They say we can shot call. You go in and you watch them scrim, and this is what they can do. Just that little corner right there, right? And if they're like well practiced, they get to about there, right? It's not very far. So the way traditionally it's broken down is like this, right? So your main support has to track 6 ultimates and has to ask for resources, and we'll talk about what asking for resources actually means, right? Because this is something that I've never seen any of you guys do. And your main tank has pathing, alt economy management, fight planning, target calling, and asking for resources. Well, everyone on the team should be asking for resource. But pretty much the way this is broken down is that your main tank pretty much has to do everything except ult track, and your main support is struggling with trying to track 6 ultimates when he can't necessarily see if Tracy's pulse bomb in some random corner somewhere, right? And honestly, Matt, tell me, what's your SR on other roles? Are you very good at playing other roles?
I'm 3.3 tank, 3.2 DPS.
And can you
I'm supporting
accurately track a shatter as well as edge can, for example?
Not long term, but I can tell if the Reiner has shattered by body language.
Yeah, so, but Edge could do the same thing, right? So it wouldn't really matter if you tracked it or he tracked it, because whose job is it to actually deny him? Edge.
The main tank.
Right.
Or
It's the
Edge,
Rhine
yeah.
v Rhine, right? The main tank is always denying the enemy main tank anyway. And when it comes to DPS ultimates, like the majority of the time, if the enemy Reaper has Death Blossom and we have a McCree, it's hit scan versus hit scan, right? Even Tracer trying to blink in for a sticky. Yes, your off tank has some input in trying to eat it, right? But realistically speaking, the McCree is the one who's trying to stop the Tracer from doing this, right? Because the Kree is the one that makes the other one fuck off. So the most important takeaway is that everyone is responsible for their counterpart from now on, okay? So if their main tank goes missing, it's Edge's fault, right? Their off tank goes missing, Ari, it's your fault, right? And that means that the off tank of the enemy team cannot just walk off on a flank somewhere. You have to know where they are, you have to know whether or not they have ult, right? And I honestly think it's the most ridiculous thing in the world that like you guys could leave this team tomorrow and 4 of you guys or 5 of you guys would not know how to ult track. That's a travesty, right? It's a valuable skill that you could take into ladder. So how can you learn it if you never get to practice it? So it's like the double whammy of being able to learn a new skill for you guys who don't normally do it, and it alleviates pressure on your main support, right? So here's a scenario, right? Our main support says this. They have Noon, Window, Blizzard, and Beat, so that's 4 ultimates, right? The main tank says, we have Noon, Shatter, and Bomb, because he hit tab and he just read the scoreboard, right? So he's like, let's use Noon and Shatter this fight. Is this a good fight plan?
No.
So this is an example of like a GM level fight plan where everyone has great comms and everything is perfect in the world for your main support and your main tank in a traditional team, right? So it would be like, we have 3 ultimates and they have 4 ultimates. This would be your main support, so this would be Matt. he would say they have Noon, Window, Beat, and Blizzard, and he's perfectly accurate in a perfect world, right? And he's like, we should dry fight because he hit tab, and he's like, oh, 4 ultimates they have, and we have 3. Maybe we shouldn't ult, right? So he's got like a good understanding of dry fighting versus ult fighting and stuff like that. And then in a perfect world, your main tank says, let's path left to avoid window. I don't know where left is, but it's just an example, right? We have to get Beat or Blizzard out. Everyone has to run on Mei, because Mei is obviously the most dangerous ult, right? Like, if we try to use ults in a fight where they use Blizzard, we might all get frozen and die, right? Beat drop does not save you from Blizzard, because someone still dies generally, right? So there's no point. They're kind of like lost fights when Blizzard gets popped, so you might as well dry fight. So if we want to try and force her to Blizzard, we don't care about anything else. What we have to do is aggressively engage on Mei, and then hold DM over her until she does die, or she Blizzards, right? It's very easy to force someone to ultimate, because they are pressured, right? But how can you guys as a team know how to pressure somebody if it's not a part of your plan? Because in a general Brawl v Brawl fight, who are we always running on?
If it's a death ball, you're running on Ryan because
Yeah, so it's always
Ryan
like
is really
mirror
good.
Brawl, it's just Ryan, right? But it doesn't make any sense, right? Does it matter if he has Shatter or not Shatter? He doesn't have Shatter. Is he dangerous?
yeah.
He's not really dangerous anymore, right? Because the most dangerous person on their team became Mei, because they have Blizzard, and that's the one we want to get out. So I don't care if everyone ignores Ryan and we all just go on Mei, because we're trying to force her to make a mistake, right? You cannot force someone into a corner without all focusing that person, right? And believe me, like, if you guys as 5 people or 6 people can burst a Reinhardt, you can burst a Mei, right? So this is a perfect world example. Now, what actually happens in Plat is this, right? So your main support, Green, says they have Noon, and then he's wrong about something. He's like, they maybe have Window. I don't know. He's like going back and forth in comms like this. It's kind of cluttered. Then he'll go, they don't have Beat. He could be wrong. And then he's like, they have Blizzard, and then he proceeds to calm, no bomb, no shatter. Now, is this inefficient calming? This is like the way it sounds. If you say they don't have these ultimates, that's like inefficient calming, right?
Yeah, nah, I wouldn't. I would just say what they have, not what they don't have.
And yet you guys are guilty of this. So,
Yes.
let's use Noon and Shatter. And that's the extent of your planning from your main tank as well, right? Then the team runs in and gets Blizzarded and dies, right? And we call this shot calling. Haha, right? So how can we achieve success, right? For this box, like how do we get this whole box? Right. So traditionally we have this. What I want it to look like is this. Okay, and we're going to talk it through roll by roll. So everyone has to, 1, track your counterpart's ult. You notice it's in every single box here, right? So that's the basis of this style of calming. And what that means is like your off tank, the off tank is responsible for making sure the off tank of the enemy team doesn't just go walk into our backline, right? Then they always have eyes on the other tank, right? You'll always know whether they died first or they died last. Why is that important?
Because you know how much ult charge they have.
Right. And Matt, do you always know that? Who died first and who died last?
Nope.
No, because that's hard for one person to track not only 6 enemy ultimates, but the order in which they died and how much they farmed. But you know who knows about the enemy off-tank's ult charge? I guarantee you that Ari does know. But because it's not Ari's responsibility, she will never say, oh, Hog has ult, right? Or, oh, Diva has bomb. And that's why it's important that you track your counterpart's ult. Now, the second point, asking for resource for your own ult. This is where things get kind of interesting, right? So if you have a high Noon, I know we don't have our hit scan DPS here right now, right? Because that's Declare?
Yeah.
Because Tanner
Correct, yep.
is Flex. Right. So let's say we have Noon, and we are playing a Mei-Cree Brawl. So that's a Ryan, a Diva, a Bap, a Lucio, and then a Mei and a Cree. Right. What can we do for Declare?
If he gets walled by the enemy, maybe we can wall him up.
Okay,
We
what
can
else?
see
We should amp.
DM him.
corners.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
should shield him, we should DM him, we should amp for him. Right. But if Declare says, I want to Noon, or Edge says, Declare go Noon, how many of those resources does he normally get?
1, maybe 2.
Maybe, right? If we're very lucky. But how does our main support know to save amp specifically for when he pops high Noon if we habitually amp into every fight? Because that's just what we do in Brawl. We never have it for when it matters, right? Same thing with the Mei wall. If we intend to wall our McCree up on the wall, and we run in there, and our McCree pops ult, but we tried to wall the enemy Ryan, and then they wall our McCree, now what? Right? So it's at the start of the fight, your comms responsibility, each and every one of you, to demand resources from your teammates to have a more successful ultimate. Because there's a big difference between, let's say, a Reaper who gets a DM or a monkey bubble over him than a Reaper who does not, right? And even if your teammates cannot provide direct resources to you, your teammates can then be told to take resources away from the enemy team. So what that means is, everyone focus D.Va so that I can Blizzard. What does it mean to focus D.Va? Does it mean to demech her?
To
Mhm.
get the DM out.
Or
Means
force
you're
her
just being an
DM.
annoyance.
Right. For ults like Blizzard and Death Blossom, right, you don't always get to demech D.Va, and as you go higher in elo, you never get to demech D.Va, right?
Yeah. She has a 2-second cooldown, so if you force her to DM, and once she drops it, you have like literally 1 second to throw your ult.
Yeah. Or you keep shooting her until she has to fly away, right, to go back for healing. And so if she has to leave, right, the moment she turns around, Blizzard, right? Very free. So, like, there's no more, oh no, my Blizzard got eaten. It's, oh, okay, we forced the D.Va to DM or fly away, and now I have a free Blizzard. We didn't have to demech her, it was nothing complicated, but by demanding resources from your team, to either be given to you or taken away from the enemy team, you achieve success with your ultimates, right? It's not random. In higher elo, it's definitely not random because you are demanding those resources from your team every single time, right? And that's something that is missing every single time we ult in low elo. Like, I've never seen you guys say anything remotely similar, right? And it's important. So your main tank here has a third
So
point.
like, let's say I have freeze, right?
Yes.
And the fight plan is to use it. So we would just say, we're gonna whatever the fight plan is, we're gonna freeze, but make sure we have D.Va's DM down or Jets.
Yeah. And what we can do is we can amp speed onto D.Va. Ignore Reinhardt, right? Unless he has Shatter, we don't give a shit about Reinhardt, right? So we could
True.
be like, everyone go on D.Va. And what happens when D.Va has 6 people mobbing her?
She freaks the fuck out.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, so she nopes out, right? It's like as simple as knowing how to apply pressure as a team onto like a spoken objective makes all the difference between you guys being like a mediocre plat team and a really good plat team or diamond team, you know? Right? Like, because you're doing something that the other guys aren't. And that's how you win, right? So, target calling is your main tank's responsibility, and now that he doesn't really have much like in the way of a job, right? He's just like, okay, my job is to say I'm hitting Reinhardt. Wham, it's done, right? And pathing. So on the way in, he's not worried about anything else. He's just like, oh, maybe if they have window, I should just walk the inside path so we don't walk in the open and die to window, right? Like, it's very, very straightforward. So everyone's got like pretty much the same thing all the way down until we get to Matt, who's on main support, right? So, like, your job now is to take the information that we have and make a fight plan. And we'll look at some examples, okay? So this is what we had before, what happens in plat. Now, this is a dry fight plan example with radical comms. So what this means is we don't intend to ult into this fight, but the comms has to look like this. So the hit scan DPS, so Declare would say they have noon. That's his contribution to the comms this fight, okay? And our flex support, so Extinction would go, they have window. And main support would go, they have beat. And then flex DPS would go, they have blizzard. Someone hits tab, it's probably your main tank, right? He's like, oh shit, we have 3 ults and they have 4. And then he looks at the clock. He didn't even have to say anything during all this, okay? He's just like, he looked at the clock, he looked at our ults, he was like, shit, we have time to dry fight, right? So he's like, let's dry fight. And then let's path to avoid window. And that's his job done, right? Isn't that so stress-free for him? It's so easy, right?
Yeah, it is.
And yet you can get higher quality comms just distributing it like this. And everyone is way more accurate, right? I think that you guys can be like accurate within 10% for the enemy team's ult on your counterpart if you're only tracking one, because it's easy, right? If you only have to keep track of one. Matt is going to be way more inaccurate tracking 6 at a time than each of you guys tracking 1. And to play in this style, you need to be accurate, right? Because it influences how we play. So yeah, your main tank's like, let's path to avoid window, he's the purple. And then your main support says, okay, so they have Beat and Blizzard, those are the most dangerous. He knows in his head, because he's learned this, that Blizzard and Beat are pretty significant ultimates, right? You know, Window is already being dealt with by your main tank. Your main tank essentially said we're pathing to avoid Window, so no big deal. Because pathing to avoid Window means what? You're also pathing to kind of avoid Noon, right? It's the same kinds of
They
sightlines
are
that they need.
essentially the same kind of ultimate, yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, we negated half their fight plan because Edge said we're going a different way. That's an extremely good fight plan already, right? We denied 2 of their 4 ultimate choices. Now, we have to get Beat or Blizzard out. This is Matt's job, right? He's like, we have to get Beat or Blizzard out, so he's like, okay, we're going for Blizzard. And then he says, everyone run on Mei. Whenever you want to get an ultimate out, you play aggressive onto that person, right? Because they either die and don't get to ult, or we cancel their ult, or they ult, but we didn't use anything, so we can just die really quick, right? Play hyper aggressive, like you have nothing to lose, because you don't. You're not investing in this fight, right? And
we're also trying to get ults, correct?
yeah, we're trying to get ultimate charge ourselves, right? And so, like,
So
we
even
play
if
aggressive.
we don't force theirs out, that's still our goal. True.
Yeah.
Or wrong.
It is true, right? And so, if we can hold DM over her until she dies, then we either eat it or she dies, right? Or we forced a big cooldown. For example, Lamp, right? Do they want to be using Lamp on their Mei of all things? No, of course not, right?
No, not when she has cryo.
Exactly, right? So we just keep pressuring her and pressuring her. And if she's in the block, then when she comes out, she has nothing. And what are we doing? We're not DMing her while she's in the block, but the moment she comes out, what do Meis do when they come out of block?
They
Freeze.
They freeze.
Or wall and freeze. Or wall themselves up, I mean.
Yeah, and so, like, we can force big ticket cooldowns by being aggressive, right? Including ultimates. So, this is an ult fight scenario again. So, make free brawl versus make free brawl, exactly what we're talking about. We have bomb and shatter, so we have an ult advantage. They only have shatter. An ult fight example in Platinum looks like this, right? Let's use bomb and shatter, says Edge. And then Matt will say they probably have shatter themselves. And then we go in.
I would say let's bait the shatter and then use ours, if that's better.
Right. And do you ever want to be the one ulting second?
No.
Technically, no. I definitely agree with that. Always hit Q first, but when it's planned out, it can work in certain scenarios.
Right, but
The
we're
only-
gambling, right?
Is with
Yeah, we are.
the ults.
So we're looking for the most reliable way to essentially play the game, right?
Oh, then yeah, we
We
Q
want to ult first. Right, so the radical comms version of this is they have shatter, says Edge. I want to use my shatter this fight. Or I'm going to shatter, if he wants to say this quickly, right? And then Ari goes, I want to bomb, let's combo. I will bomb above their head behind them, right? So then Ryan's like, let's make sure to amp speed on their Ryan, or the main support, Matt, could be like, I'm going to amp speed on their Ryan first, right? And then we can stun him, and I'll try to pin. So now we're trying to apply 2 CCs that would not ordinarily get applied to a Reinhardt, because normally it's just, let's just pin the Ryan with bomb, or some shit like that, right? No, right? To have...
we have to make sure we do that, because then if not, their Ryan's going to shatter us first, and then, yeah.
Yeah, and, or we throw the bomb and our Ryan pins in, and then we all get shattered, or some shit like that, right? Or he misses the pin, or it doesn't really matter, right? So, like, there are other ways to do it. So, what makes this different than the previous example? Can anyone tell me?
We don't,
There's
like,
actual
one that's in yellow, we
abilities and
definitely
sensibles.
don't really do that. The only time we really, like, kind of call for the amp is for high noon, stuff like that. I mean, Matt does really good at calling it, but I feel like we're missing a lot of this, yes.
So, what we're missing is demanding resources, right? And then looking for combos, or, like, direct plans for what's going to happen, right? Because it's different to say, I want to bomb, versus I'm going to bomb above their head behind them, because that means the Ryan has to turn, you know, like, you're extending your fight planning to be efficient and also effective, right?
It also tells you Ryan how to set up, and then the rest of your team, you know, all that too.
But it's not beyond the realm of possibility if you're all sharing comms, right? But it is beyond the realm of possibility if it's just Matt and Edge doing comms, you know? If they were, like, sitting there watching the game, they might be able to come up with that, but in the game itself, they have to play too, you know? So it's not realistic. So ult economy rules. Read it. If we have an ult disadvantage, or we're equal in ultimates, and there is time left for this, we have to dry fight. Okay? Why is this important?
Because ults win the game.
Exactly. So if we have an ult advantage and we're the team that manages ult economy better, we will roll the other team even if we are worse. Like, a
Matter of fact, I have a perfect example of that. I think second game yesterday, we thought we had round two. They had 99, we were at 99, we were cleaning them up. They grouped up and had all
Lee
6
Jong?
ults, and they won. Yeah,
Yeah.
Lee Jung. We thought we had it in the bag. They came back with 6 ults and fucking wiped us.
And the majority of the time, if you're 5v6 because you lost someone before to non-ult related reasons, right? Do we want to ult in this fight or no? If we have time left to dry fight. Yes or no?
Wait, you
No.
cut out the first part.
Right, so if we lose a person, doesn't matter who. Let's say we lost to Claire, okay? So we have no hit scan DPS. We have some ults, they have some ults, right? We have 5, they have 4. Do we want to ult into this fight without Declare? We have time to dry fight.
No, not if we have time to
I
dry
mean,
fight.
we ideally just back up if we can.
Yeah,
Right.
I would say kite back. I mean, if you have to reset, but I don't think you should.
We should just run in without Declare, okay? And we should try and force out some more ultimates. Because we
Yeah,
are
that's
already
what I
in a
was gonna
losing
say.
fight, right? We know we're
Really?
going to
Wow.
lose because we're 5v6, right? We
If
just
they
lost
have
our
ults-
guy.
If they have ults, Tanner, and we don't have ults, we're getting ult charged. They're not, and we can force them to use an ult.
Even if we have ults and they
True,
have ults
yeah,
too, like
it's-
5 ults versus 4, we have 5, they have 4, right? Those ults need
well,
to
if
get
we
used.
back up, they're just gonna shoot us, which, whatever ults they didn't have, they're gonna also now have the next fight rather than us just running into them and dying.
But if we're dry fighting, by the end of it, we're going to have the ult economy advantage.
Exactly,
Right,
because
but
they
what
have
I'm
to
saying,
use something.
instead of backing up like we normally would, how Alexis is saying push into them, like pretty much int kind of thing. Not int, but you know what I'm saying.
But you're like
we would
inting
normally
with a
back up.
purpose, right? Onto a person
Yeah.
you're trying to get the ult out
And
of.
feeding.
Yeah, it's planned feeding. Then it's not feeding anymore. It's just a plan, right? 6 people or 5 people doing one thing together is not feeding. It's a plan, right? So
May is ult. Focus her. Why? Because if she gets ult charge, she doesn't get any ult charge because she already has ult.
Yeah.
exactly. So like if they have those ults and we're close in ult numbers to them, but we're down for some reason, right? If they're down, you always play aggressive, right? Because what aggression does is it forces mistakes, right? Or it forces ults from the enemy team to alleviate pressure, because that's what ults are about, right? Alleviating pressure.
Yeah, then we can level the field.
Exactly.
Five.
So it could be 5-on-3 ults next fight, or 5-on-2 ults next fight, right? Or we might charge our 6, and they might charge one more, but we got more out of the fight from them, you know? So we, like, even though we were at a disadvantage because we lost somebody, we played more aggressive, and then we regained our advantage for the next fight, right? It's future planning. So, like, I want you guys to think about the ult economy in this way, because, like, no one seems to think about the ult economy, like, ever, and it's freaking weird. Like, it's a game about ultimates, and no one talks about it. So
I think because that was designated to me like a long time ago, and it's just never been changed. That's probably why like I can't really do that as a flex DPS. Like it's really hard.
DPS
play the
shouldn't
game.
have hardly. DPS typically don't have comms of any kind, especially
I-
at skin.
I know, I agree. Again, it was just because at that time, like Edge wasn't really talking like he does now. Like Edge used to be very quiet. I know it's crazy, but yeah. So I think if we designate that, this will probably be the outcome after a few games.
right, and we know that, like, your performance would suffer, Tanner, right? If I said, hey, you go track 6 ultimates. But do you think your performance will suffer if I say, okay, you have 1 DPS on the enemy team, your job is to keep track of him at all times, you know, and tell me if he has ult. Tell your team. You can do
No.
that, right?
That's what I do. That's my job.
Right, like, it's very easy and it's not going to make your performance suffer. But if you had to do Matt's job on your job as well, you would suck, right? And that's just the way it is. And so, like, no one's ever tried to, like, break comms down like this, and I do it with teams that I coach because this is the way I think is the most efficient way to coach a team with, like, not GM callers, right? You can't take stuff from the OWL and bring it down to plat or diamond and assume it's going to work, right?
I love that when people do that.
But people do it all the time, and I think it's wrong,
Yeah.
right? Like, we have
That's
to be
my
understanding.
I don't play Zarya. Let's run
Bro, I
Gutsy.
seen this in Owl, bro. Let's try it out.
Yeah,
What?
but in OWL, they have Defran, you know? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
For sure, for it.
They're not in plat.
Hey guys, let's do the fucking play on Kings Row. Oh,
They
we
can
already
do
played with
that.
the Widow. Yeah, but our Widow sucks, and
They have big
it works
brains.
for them.
So we have to pick like elo appropriate comps for ourselves, right? And this is the best way. And honestly, I would do this if I had another GM team that I had time to play on. I would do this, right? Because like everyone's individual like playing performance is better too, right? Like you're gonna have a main support and a main tank that play better because they're less distracted, right? Like there's no downside to playing like this so long as you can all get organized. That's the big deal, right? Discipline. Right. So we're all going to try and focus specifically the most dangerous ult we want to get out. So we have to play aggressive. We are never on the back foot, okay? We are always going and aggressing into them. We are never getting aggressed into, okay?
Yeah, we definitely have to work on that because
Move your SPs, boys.
I definitely feel like we're getting aggressed on quite a bit more than we should be.
I would agree with that. So, hi Kay.
Hello. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's recorded, so it'll get posted and you can watch it and follow along too. Great. So alt economy rule number 2. If we intend to alt, we must always alt first, okay? If you didn't alt first, you massively misplayed, okay? And even better if you can alt them in rotation, okay? Because teams are always weakest in rotation. Can you name me a team comp that is not weak in rotation?
No, it's because people get split or their attention gets caught. Something,
They-
anything could happen.
Every
They're
team comp
trying
has
not
an
to
element of
maybe-
setup, right?
Yep.
I don't think there's a single team comp that doesn't have setup. Even like the ball comp, where like your team is like everywhere. Your Zen break still needs to get set up, so they're most vulnerable when they're walking around, right?
Yep.
Did I miss something you said, Matt?
I was gonna say it's like every single composition either uses abilities to rotate in position, or they cannot use those abilities while in rotation. Otherwise, they can't do anything once they're done
Exactly.
rotating.
Double shield. They gotta
Like
keep
with dive, if you're
putting
diving
shields
to
down,
position yourself,
stuff like that.
yeah, it's like if you're with dive, if you're diving somewhere to position, you're waiting like a whole 8-10 seconds before you can actually dive.
Yep.
You wasted 10 seconds when you could have just taken the 30 seconds to walk.
And even in rotation, dive comps are very weak, right? Because they don't have shields, right? And so like even the monkey or the ball gets poked out very easily. Bastion comps, they have to pick up and walk themselves somewhere, meaning Bastion is not set up, he's not scary, right? Like every team comp is like this. So knowing this to be 100% true trend in Overwatch, there's never been a team comp in the history of team comps that is not weak in rotation. The prime time to ult somebody? When they're rotating, right? We don't want to let them get set up because that sucks for us. So if we have the chance, we must ult them first, in rotation if possible, and we must always be on the offensive, okay? Rule number 4, this is the big one for our comms. This is where it applies to our comms, okay? We must always have a plan for the enemy ultimates, okay? So if window is stated, right, everyone needs to, like, path according to what Edge says. Edge has to come up with a plan for window, right? Bomb. This one's a no-brainer, right? Hug a piece of cover. Apparently it's not a no-brainer because we do die to Diva Bomb, but, you know, like, hug cover, right?
Not me ever.
I am very guilty of that.
I've never.
I have a terrible track record.
Right, and EMP. You know, I watched you guys get EMP'd in the last VOD review, right? 5 people. Everyone except Edge, who got stuck by a Tracer pulse bomb somewhere else in a corner, right? Because he was trying to 1v1 Tracer. And we called it, right? And so, like, we must always be very disciplined with these rules, okay? And this is how you find success, because this is how I took a 2.2k average team who literally went 2 months without winning a scrim map. Not a scrim map, okay? To now, 1 year later, not even, it's been 9 months, okay? They are your elo, so about 3,000 SR, and they made, I think, 3 of their last 4 scrim partners leave early. Because they destroyed them. Like, we had this one scrim where the enemy Zarya could not grab the whole scrim, because every time they wanted to grab, we were like, they have grab, go on Zarya. And then we would just hold DM over her face.
They're mauling because they're probably looking at their SR. They don't ever play comp, so their SR probably still shows mainly gold. They're like,
Exactly.
fuck, we're getting rolled by a gold team.
And it looks really bad on the enemy team to lose like that, right? But, like, even if you were a GM Zarya, right?
That's
if the
why
whole
SR
team runs
doesn't
on
mean
you,
shit.
right? Like, if a whole team runs on you, Ari, and you're playing Zarya, what is going to happen to you if you try to grab? It gets eaten, right?
Yep.
And can you run away from the 6-man brawl team running on you?
Fuck no.
No, right? And if you were GM,
Yeah,
would it make a
right.
difference?
Nope.
If you were
No.
bronze, would it make a difference?
No.
So we're looking for the most reliable way to achieve success, right? Doesn't matter who you're playing against, what you're playing against. If you follow these rules, you will be able to complete the whole box and therefore achieve communication success, right?
I do remember
That's
seeing an
Overwatch.
interesting experiment of someone putting a GM